Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor, Sikkema, Dalton, Wasserman here with you guys on a wonderful Tuesday morning to talk about the AFC East. We're previewing the AFC East here, the four teams in that division. Going to tell you what we think of those teams, the expectations that we have for them, some win projections, obviously some moves that they've made throughout the offseason. Just getting to do a big discussion about these four teams for the Bills, the Patriots, the Dolphins, and Dalton's Jets. And kind of talk about what the 2025 season is going to hold with them. Dalton, I know it's day one of pumpkin spice latte season. So I have to ask. I'm sure. I don't even have to ask if you're a big pumpkin spice guy. I'm sure you are. I'm sure anybody who knows you knows that that's going to be in your wheelhouse. Are you on cup number 2 or 3 this morning when it comes to pumpkin spice lattes, my friend?
I mean, you say for anybody that knows me, and then you ask the question like you don't know me at all. Trev, I don't even drink coffee, to be honest. Nothing. I don't even. Pumpkin spice just always felt like a cinnamon ripoff to me. I'm like, just have cinnamon. Like, I don't understand the point of it and why we drink it for 3 months straight. But it just, I don't know where exactly you got this idea, unless you're just pulling people's legs here. But I don't even drink coffee. I just wake up like this.
And now you people know why I asked him this question live on the show and didn't tell him I was going to do it beforehand. Wait, hold on. But you're a Skyline chili guy.
Absolutely.
Right? Don't they do the cinnamon?
Yeah.
On chili?
Oh no, I have no issue with cinnamon. It just feels like pumpkin spice is a cinnamon ripoff. I like cinnamon for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not an issue at all.
You say it's a ripoff as if it's not an enhancement. Can it not be an enhancement?
No. I mean, it's always perspective, but no, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say it is. Just also, is this starting? Since when did this start happening in August now? When did this? This used to be a thing. I guess I'm going to talk like an old head now. This used to be a thing that was like 3 weeks, maybe for the entirety of October. Now it's still like deep into summer, Trevor, and now we're just like, oh, it's fall. No, screw it, pumpkin spice. I don't get it.
And again, now you people know why I asked him this question and threw him a curveball.
We're going to be having pumpkin spice on like Easter pretty soon. What's going on here? Just a year-round thing? Just leave it in year-round. You'll sell it year-round anyway. You'll make all the money you want.
The season of capitalism is 365, my friend.
That's true.
You got to understand that.
True.
You got to understand that. Well, whether or not you are sipping a pumpkin spice latte or not, I know that you could enjoy a PFF Plus subscription. If you don't have one right now would be a great time to get one. You get to find all the data that we're talking about here on this show. A lot of things for college football as well. Fantasy football season obviously is in full swing. Maybe you've got a couple of drafts that you need help with as we're getting towards the 11th hour of the season. We can help you out with that. We can help you out with some best ball format stuff as well. And then, of course, it's a year-long subscription. It's around basically as long as pumpkin spice is, or should be, if you ask Dalton. And that means you're going to get value all year long. You're going to get all the grades during the season every single week as we go through the grades release shows and the previews. But then when we get into draft season, that's where it really shines as well. When we talk about the team building aspects and how to make your team better, make sure that all the teams out there have a chance to win a Lombardi trophy. Let's start with a team that, all right, maybe not a Lombardi trophy this year, but we could be well on our way, Dalton. And that is your New York Jets. Take a look at the New York Jets to start things off here in the AFC East. Their new head coach, Aaron Glenn, who was one of the coordinators from the Detroit Lions that was obviously very coveted going into this offseason and over the last couple of offseasons, to be honest with you. 2024 record, not so great. 5-12. They were 4th in the division, last in the division there. Defense took a step back in 2024. The previous 2 seasons, they were one of the better defenses in the NFL, but they just didn't quite have the offense. Last year, I think the offense maybe looked a little bit better, but the defense really took a step back, and that's why you see that 5-win total there. On offense, they were 19th in the NFL, and PFF graded a 74.6, and then on the defensive side, a 64.0. That was 25th in the NFL. The projected win total, we've got them close to 6.5. So 6.3 is the projected mathematical win total that we have for the New York Jets. Dalton, your overall thoughts here. I got you fired as if asking about pumpkin spice lattes and I guess the ripoff that is cinnamon trying to impersonate the pumpkin flavor there. Now I'm getting even more fired up talking about your Jets here to start this show. How do you feel about where this team is at And then what's the expectations for them before we get into the details?
Well, what's funny for me is, as I'm sure you could expect, I've generally been the one around the Jets, hype and could Justin Fields have a bounce back in the defense and this. I've generally been the one to kind of temper that down. I know that's surprising to you, Trevor, but I think this year is more about Aaron Glenn just resetting the culture and setting the tone and finding foundational players than it is necessarily about wins and losses. I think that win total projection around 6.3. I actually think that's about right. I think you look at this team, they're not completely barren of talent. You've got guys like Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, a couple of good linebackers. I think especially on defense, their starting 11 could play with a lot of teams. I just think you have a lack of depth and some flaws on this team, and a team that's really trying to reset and learn how to win, as they have been trying to learn how to win for the last 15 years, right? They still haven't made the playoffs since 2010. Obviously, the last regime in the last 2 years with Aaron Rodgers, Nathaniel Hackett, Robert Saleh, all that stuff, it really it just didn't set the right precedent intangibly for what this team is supposed to be. I think Aaron Glenn's goal this year is to reset that, find as many foundational long-term pieces as he can, and I think eventually what you have here is the guys that don't want to be there or they don't feel like are long-term pieces, they're going to get filtered out either through the season or after, and obviously they still need a franchise quarterback. Do I think it's Justin Fields? No, I think that's a very low likelihood that it is Justin Fields, considering what we've seen from him already for 4 years. He played decent football in Pittsburgh last year, but it wasn't great. I think this is a team in transition. I think it's once again, and it feels like we've said this however many times over the last decade, they're in the beginning stages of a rebuild, and I just think they didn't take advantage. They couldn't take advantage. I think 2023 was the year when Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles. That was the year if you were going to make the playoffs. That's when you were going to do it if Rodgers was healthy. Last year, the defense took a huge step back. They didn't have enough of the supporting cast. They didn't run the football well enough. So I think this team, it's really more so about the intangibles, the culture shock, and just trying to find who the long-term pieces are. We know Sauce Gardner's one. We know Garrett Wilson is one. We know Quinnen Williams is one. Who else is it going to be beyond that?
Yeah. Rodgers tearing his Achilles, and we say this all the time, injuries are the worst part of this game. And that sucked because that defense was elite that season, and they really, I think, had a good chance to make the playoffs that season. Win a Super Bowl, okay, maybe not, but certainly make the playoffs, make some noise, be a really good football team, and then the injury happens, and it totally just changed the trajectory of not just that year, but the year that followed, and now we've got a full turning of the page with a new front office, a new head coaching staff, and I agree with you completely. Now, what they are maybe okay with now at this point is how foundationally sound their offensive line is. I mean, Olu Fashanu, John Simpson, Joe Tittman, Elijah Vera Tucker. Now you're drafting Armand Membu. That feels like the strength of this team now. And if you are theoretically taking everything down to the studs and saying, all right, we're going to build this team from the ground up, you're going to look at the trenches to be able to do that. And I think that on the offensive side of the football and on the other side, okay, there's a little bit more unproven or things that we need to see from those guys, but you've got Quinnen Williams, you've got Will McDonald, you've got Jermaine Johnson. I know Jermaine Johnson's gone through his injuries, and so, again, that's a little bit of an unknown. But again, if you're taking this team down to ground zero, you'd want to build it through the trenches. You have some pretty good trench pieces, especially along the offensive line. So how do you feel about the offensive line with this team? Because it really does feel like it's going to be their biggest strength.
Yeah, I think there's two things that are going to be big factors this year. One is obviously the development of the two tackles, Olu Fashanu and Armand Membu, right? That's what everybody's going to be looking for as their last two first-round picks. And the other one to me is the health of Elijah Vera Tucker. Anytime he's on the field, he's really, really good. He just doesn't get on the field often enough. He's had a lot of injury issues throughout his career. But their front five of Fashanu, Simpson, Tittman, Vera Tucker, and Membu, that can be the core of this team. That can be the heartbeat of this team. And I think especially in the run game and what Tanner Engstrand is going to want to do, obviously he came with Aaron Glenn from the Lions as well, they're going to want to run the football a lot. I think as long as they don't fall behind early in games, it's very realistic that the Jets are going to lead the league in rushing attempts this year. You've got Justin Fields, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. They even like their fourth back, the undrafted rookie Donovan Edwards. They're going to build around the run game. It's going to look like the early stages of the Lions rebuild back in 2021 when, look, they were physical, they ran the football, they drafted Penei Sewell, they built around the offensive line. I think they're going for the same blueprint here.
Now, when it comes to the passing game, I mean, you mentioned they're probably going to lead the league in rushing attempts. I do agree with you. I feel like I've been telling people that the Jets' emphasis this year is going to be running the football and stopping the run. Like that is going to be their two emphasis points that are on the whiteboard, and they're not even writing them in erasable marker. They're writing them in a Sharpie. Like those are the things that are going to stay on the whiteboard the entire season long. Run the football and stop the run. Not only do they want to lean into that because it's, I think, just the more fundamental part of the game, especially when you are team building. There's not a lot when it comes to throwing the ball. Like there's not a lot of like, oh, okay, it might tempt us to lean more into the passing game because we've got this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. They have some receivers that'll be nice on the team, but it's basically just Garrett Wilson. And when you look at, okay, you think that this team could lead the NFL in rushing attempts, Garrett Wilson could lead the NFL in targets, despite us just saying that, because he feels like the only viable option on this team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you just look at the depth, and I think this is an issue at a lot of positions for the Jets. It's why they just traded for more defensive tackle depth. They don't have a lot of depth off the edge, but with their pass catchers, I think it's especially true. You have Garrett Wilson, who's an absolute star, but Josh Reynolds is there because he's familiar with the system. Alan Lazard is there just because he was there the last couple of years, right? Arian Smith, their fourth-round pick, they like, but he's a bit raw, and he's got to work on the hands. The tight end room is Mason Taylor, their second-round pick, Jeremy Ruckert, Stone Smart. You just don't have anything close to another star player aside from Garrett Wilson. There's been talks that they're going to use Breece Hall a little bit more in the receiving game and move him around the formation this year, and he might actually be their second best receiver right now unless they trade him anytime soon. So I think you have this problem at multiple positions for the Jets, but at wide receiver and tight end really put together, anything behind Garrett Wilson doesn't feel like too much of a threat right now.
So you wrote the article, not only previewing this team, but all the teams in the NFL, which everybody can go see over at pff.com, especially if the app, you can see all that right on your phone. In these articles, you have a key statistic, for some of these players. And the key statistic that you wrote for the New York Jets is 3.08. That's the average time to throw, which is the third highest amongst qualified quarterbacks. That's Justin Fields' average time to throw. So dig into that a little bit more, sort of that number, how high it is relative to the rest of the league, and then how much you think that could change with Justin Fields at this point into his NFL career.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're at or above that 3-second mark, you do take legitimately a longer time to throw the ball than everybody else, right? We often talk about the 2.5-second mark being the line between stable and unstable, and a lot of quarterbacks are between about 2.5 and 2.8. So when you're getting up in that 3-second range, and there's guys with high time to throws that are really good, right? Obviously, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts is another guy like that holds on to the football. But Fields, I think in a similar way that we've talked about Caleb Williams under Ben Johnson in Chicago, needing to speed it up and throw the ball on time because it's the same system. You have that with Justin Fields and Tanner Engstrand, I think, in this dimension. You want him to throw the ball on time, the play action schemes, getting the timing down on those inside routes, especially all those in cuts that are in this offense, and just generally not holding the football too long. Because even in years when Fields' turnover-worthy play rates, say, weren't so bad, the biggest problem was holding the ball too long, taking sacks, trying to make too much happen with his legs. Now, you don't want to take his legs away. He's going to be a high time to throw guy, and you want him to scramble because he's such a great athlete. But there are moments in this offense where you're just going to need him to throw the football on time. And hopefully, like we said, that thin receiving core can separate often enough for him to do it. But that's going to be a big thing I'm looking at, is how often can he throw the football on time at the top of his drop before he just decides to start improvising.
Last thoughts here. I want to talk about Sauce Gardner because we didn't touch on him yet. 2 phenomenal years in his first 2 years in his career, and then it just felt like he really struggled last year, but the whole defense struggled. And I think there is something to, I think, the human element of playing the game when you lose motivation for a coaching staff, for the direction, for all of that. And it sort of felt, and I can understand the frustration here, the defense the defense had to watch the offense be the reason that they did not make the playoffs 2 years in a row when their side of the ball was clearly good enough to do it. So then when everything kind of started struggling again, I can understand losing a little bit of motivation and focus. And it felt like that happened not just with Sauce, but sort of everybody on the Jets defense. What are your thoughts with him overall? A down year for him. And I think the cornerback position by nature is very up and down. It's very high variance. You could have some years where you look like the best corner in the world. You could have other years where you look below average and you're still considered by many to be one of the best at your position. So it's often a tough one to keep into perspective but I'm wondering what your perspective is on Sauce heading into this fourth year.
No, I personally, Trev, I still think he's the best cornerback in football. And I think even a slightly down year last year, his coverage grade was still in the mid-70s with like one or two bad games there. There was a game early, I believe, against Tennessee. Actually, I think Calvin Ridley got him a couple of times. But otherwise, like maybe he didn't have the 90 coverage grade, but he was still very solid last year. And I think this year I'm excited to watch him get to play in a lot more man-to-man coverage. I think Aaron Glenn, he likes to get aggressive. He likes to blitz a lot, and he likes to get in press man coverage. I think you're going to see Sauce Gardner really locked on a lot of wide receiver ones this year, which wasn't really the case under the previous regime. They didn't run a ton of man coverage really until after Robert Saleh was fired and Jeff Ulbrich just decided to start taking his chances. But in general, throughout his career, he's played a lot of off coverage, a lot of cover three in that defense. I think Aaron Glenn getting more aggressive and knowing the talent that he has in Sauce, especially in man-to-man coverage, I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. And I still think he's the best cornerback in football over a 3-year sample, highest coverage grade, highest PFF wins above replacement, most forced incompletions. I think this is somebody who's really going to benefit actually from the new mentality of Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilkes in this defense.
Ben Lindsay, who is a czar of our PFF data and our PFF Ultimate product, he has some season-long bets for every team. And through every show, we've been able to give those to you guys, some of Ben's favorite bets here. And we're doing the same here on this show. For the New York Jets, he has Breece Hall, their running back, under 850.5 rushing yards at -115. You can find that over on DraftKings. His explanation, he says, this is a prop where PFF's fantasy projections for Hall, which is 616 rushing yards this season, show significant value on the under. He's in what should be a clear backfield split with Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis to a little bit of a lesser extent. And with Allen getting positive reviews from the Jets coaching staff this season. And, I didn't bring this up at the beginning of the show because I knew we were going to talk about the running back room and Breece Hall towards the end of the segment here. But going towards what you said and how you sort of introed the New York Jets this season and what Aaron Glenn's all about, I think that he sort of set the tone when he was initially asked about Breece Hall, and he wasn't very committal on Breece Hall. And I think that was him saying that because he has sort of changed his tune a little bit on that, because it kind of felt like at the beginning he was like, yeah, Breece Hall might not be on this team, and then it was like, whoa, okay. And I think what he was trying to do at the beginning of his tenure as coach was he was basically trying to say, I don't care who you are. Like, you have to earn your spot on this team. And I don't think he meant to single out Breece Hall, but his message sort of came out just within that question about Breece Hall, and it was basically just a way to say, like, you have to earn your place on this team. Now, I think that he's changed his tune a little bit, and he's gotten a little bit sort of brighter in the way that he talks about Breece Hall, but I do still think that this is a pretty split backfield here, and we already mentioned there's going to be a lot of rushing attempts to go around this season, and I don't think that just means they're all going to go to Breece Hall, even though he's had a couple of nice years with the Jets. So what do you think about this one below 850.5? It feels like a low number for Breece Hall given his talent level, but given the situation, I could understand him maybe finishing somewhere in the 700 to 800 range. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think, look, Glenn has said he wants to use a committee approach. Breece Hall, heading into the final year of his contract, has said out loud, I'm not their guy, kind of implying like, okay, this is going to be my last year in New York. Now, maybe he plays really well in a contract year, or I still think there's a very real possibility, whether it's before the season starts or before the trade deadline, I very well think Breece Hall could get traded because of the depth that they have and because of how much the Jets like Braylon Allen. And we already know with running backs, you have to have a special guy if you're going to sign him to a big second-year contract, right? Or just draft another one next year. Just draft one every year and see which one hits, right? So I think this is a situation, if you're looking for an over, I take the Jets at their word that they're going to use Breece Hall as a receiver a lot more often maybe than he was used the past couple of years, and he's got dynamic receiving ability too. But as far as the rushing total, everything is just too split. It feels like the committee approach in this backfield is going to hold back his rushing production. I would definitely take under that number.
All right, let's talk about the New England Patriots next. A new era for the New England Patriots, and a new era with a familiar face now with Mike Vrabel as their head coach. When you look at what they did last season, 4-13 under Gerard Mayo as head coach there was a lot of talk about who was going to take over for Bill Belichick, and did they really do a lot of due diligence with bringing in head coaching candidates, or did they already make their mind up on Mayo? It felt like they already kind of made their mind up on him, and it just did not turn out to be the season that they hoped it would be, and the start of something special. So he's now out. Mike Vrabel is in. Certainly it makes it easier to come to that conclusion and make that transition when a guy like Mike Vrabel is available, given the success that he had when he was with the Tennessee Titans, given the fact that he is a franchise legend as a player with the Patriots. So now he's in charge, taking over for a team that was last in this division last year. Offensive grade, 63.2. 30th in the NFL. Defensive grade, 64.4. That was 24th in the NFL. We're kind of bullish on the Patriots, right? When you look at the fact that they finished with 4 wins last year, doubling that this year. A lot of roster turnover, a lot of change there. Drake May, obviously, a quarterback, but we're giving them a projected win total of 8. How do you feel about the Patriots heading into this season, Dalton? And then we'll sort of dig into some biggest strengths and weaknesses for the team.
I think you're right. Bullish is the word. They've had a spectacular offseason, right? You got a credible head coach in there who's had a lot of success in Tennessee and knows the culture in New England well. You've got a better offensive line with guys like Will Campbell and Morgan Moses signed. They brought in Garrett Bradbury to play center. They still have Cole Strange, who only played 2 games last year, right? The weapons, I think the speed on offense and the ability to separate on the outside is a lot better with Diggs and obviously Travion Henderson, the speed he brings, Kyle Williams on the outside as a draft pick. I mean, I just think this team in general, and then the way they've built this defense, I'm really bullish on this defense, Trevor. You look at our unit rankings, and I know they were 24th in defensive grade last year, but you look at everything they added, especially in free agency. We have them down coming into the year as the 13th best defensive line, the 3rd best linebacker unit, and the 5th best secondary. I really think this defense has top 10 potential and is going to keep them in a lot of games. It's starting to feel like now, and obviously, again, the offensive line is young, especially Will Campbell at left tackle, but I really think Drake May now becomes the X factor. They've got a solid running back room, especially with Travion Henderson and the speed they have back there. Now he's looked great in the preseason. I think Drake May is the X factor, and as long as he develops the way he's supposed to, this team is going to be a whole lot better than last year.
Yeah, I agree. Even with some question marks that they might have at the pass catcher positions, Drake May is somebody who, over the 2 years that he was a starter at North Carolina, I believe he was number 1 in the country at total big-time throws in that 2-year stretch. And so this is a guy who knows how to push the ball deep down the field. And I think last year we saw him win with his legs a little bit. He reminded people, hey, I got some mobility to me too. I've got a strong arm, but you got to pay attention to when I tuck it and run it a little bit here, which makes him, I don't want to say like a total dual threat, but he is. He's somebody that's a little bit like Patrick Mahomes, where Mahomes, I mean, you wouldn't think of him necessarily as a dual threat quarterback, but he is somebody who, if you're playing man coverage and all your defensive backs have their back to the ball, you don't have a linebacker who's specifically trying to spy, then okay, if I break the pocket, if I get outside the tackle box, yeah, I can pick up a first down with my legs. I think that Drake May is in that category as well of guys who sort of have that ability athletically to be able to do stuff like that and put a stress on a defense. So really, to me, it kind of just comes down to how well this offensive line holds up, right? Because it's a very different and young offensive line. You draft Jared Wilson, you draft Will Campbell, you bring in Garrett Bradbury, you have Mike Onwenu from last year, but Morgan Moses in there as well. You drafted Marcus Bryant. I mean, it's just so much change to this offensive line. Do they have enough time? And really, I think the question mark is, how long does it take for them to get that chemistry together? Is it 4 weeks into the season? Is it 8 weeks into the season? Is it 12 weeks into the season? Because to me, that will almost hold the key for, do the Patriots get somewhere around 8-9 wins? Because I agree with you. On paper, this defense should be really good. And Mike Vrabel coach defenses are often very, very good. Josh McDaniels is also back as an offensive coordinator. Say whatever you want about Josh McDaniels as a head coach. He has been around this league a long, long time. And I understand he was, with Tom Brady, and he's played with some good quarterbacks, and he's been able to coach some good quarterbacks, and that certainly helped his longevity there. But he's seen a lot, and he knows a lot, and I think he's going to be great for Drake May's development, at least in theory. So I think the offensive side of the ball is certainly where we have the most question marks with the Patriots. But for you, is it along that offensive line, or is it at that receiver room?
To me, it's the offensive line. I actually like the way the receiver room's coming together. You've got Stephon Diggs, who's still a reliable veteran if he's healthy. You've got Mac Hollins, who can get the job done out there. I think Kyle Williams is going to get a lot of looks as the vertical threat. Still have a reliable tight end in Hunter Henry. Travion Henderson's going to factor into the passing game as well. I think the offensive line is the big question, right? I like on paper the improvements they've made. Garrett Bradbury hasn't always graded very highly for us, but he's an experienced veteran and really better than anything they had up there last year. I really like the way Will Campbell looks this preseason preseason. I think he's going to fit like a glove there. Morgan Moses had his lowest graded season last year, but he was playing through an injury. If he's healthy, he's still a solid player. Michael Wenu's a solid player, especially playing guard full time. He's always switching back and forth. So I think the offensive line, it's definitely better. It should not be the worst O-line in the league like it was last year. I just got to see it. It's kind of that thing. I got to see it, and I got to, just like you mentioned, see them gel together. So that's what I'm looking at, especially in conjunction with Drake May and just trying to settle down in the pocket back there.
So for the quarterback spotlight, and again, a key stat that you had here, it was once again for the quarterback position. 67.4 passing grade on 10 or more yard throws, second lowest among quarterbacks with at least 80 attempts. Now, that was Drake May last season. You can sort of understand that a little bit when it comes to the offensive line struggles that he had last year, the wide receivers that he was throwing to last year. But for a player who, like I mentioned earlier, led college football in a 2-year sample size in big-time throws, that is a stat that, yeah, okay, like you're a little bit worried about it with him, but you can realistically tell yourself that that is going to jump, that is going to skyrocket if you give this guy enough time to read the field and some wide receivers that he has the confidence to throw the ball to. Is that how you feel as well?
Absolutely, yeah. To me, it's not an indictment on him at all. It's an indictment on New England and just the lack of personnel, the lack of productive personnel they had in their offense last year. So, like you mentioned, at wide receiver, Jalen Polk, who's going to be out this entire year with an injury now, and Javon Baker last year, those two guys just couldn't get it done. They really didn't have any vertical threats until maybe the end of the very end of the season. Kayshon Boutte started playing a little bit better, and I think he's going to factor in along with Pop Douglas as well. But you just saw last year as an offense, and this again, this isn't a full indictment on May, as an entire offense, they couldn't get vertical last year. They just had no ability to do so. If they're able to do that, that's the type of passer that Drake May is. He's a lot like you talk about Ben Roethlisberger, Justin Herbert, those guys that like to push the ball downfield. Drake May wants to be one of those guys, and he just didn't have the weapons or the protection to do it last year, which really affected the passing grade. So I do expect that to be better as long as guys, especially like Kyle Williams on the outside with the speed that he has, as long as those guys develop properly too.
It feels a little bit like a mercenary defense on this team when you look at how many newcomers are scheduled to be starters for them. I'm going to list off some of the names, and you just tell me, who you're most excited about. I know you wrote down Milton Williams in your article that you wanted to have as a defensive spotlight, but you have Williams, who is coming off an incredible year where he earned an elite overall grade thanks to an elite overall pass rushing grade with the Philadelphia Eagles last year. Kyrie's Tonga as well on the defensive line. Caleb Chason. Robert Spillane comes over from the Las Vegas Raiders. Harold Landry from the Titans, which Mike Vrabel knows well. Now he's over in New England. And then Carlton Davis at the cornerback spot. They've also added Jack Gibbons at the linebacker spot, who will probably be a rotational and a depth guy for them, as will Marcus Epps at the safety position. So a lot of veterans there. I mentioned it kind of feels a little bit like a mercenary defense for how many snaps a lot of those guys are going to get this year. Is Williams the guy that you are most excited about here on this defense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're talking about a guy who led the league in pass rush grade last year, had a huge breakout in Philadelphia, was a huge part of their defensive line alongside Jalen Carter. And I think the biggest thing that excites me is that if you get Milton Williams playing anything close to what he did in Philadelphia last year, and you get a healthy Christian Barmore who didn't play a whole lot last year because of a blood clot issue, you get those two guys playing at their peak, you've got one of the best interior pass rushes in football. I think they could be a major problem, and if Mike Vrabel wants to sit back in coverage and not blitz a whole lot, then you're talking about two guys on the inside that can absolutely collapse pockets as long as they're both healthy and productive. I think Barmore is the guy that excites me just as much next to Williams as Williams does himself. If you get the more snaps that you get both of them playing at their peak, they're going to be dangerous up front, really dangerous. I think especially obvious passing situations with that interior pass rush and those two guys, they're going to be a real problem.
Robert Spillane also, I think, is huge for this team. 87.3 run defense grade last season. Walt has told us many times this offseason that Robert Spillane's a dog, and he said that the Raiders could not let him go. Unfortunately, the Raiders did let him go. Now he's with the Patriots, and I really do think that that combination of Christian Barmore, if he's out there and fully healthy, and Milton Williams is going to be really tough to deal with on the interior as a pass rushing group. And I think that Robert Spillane gives you the ability to be pretty aggressive up front because of how sound he is at making sure the ball doesn't get past him as a run defender at the second level of that defense as well. So Robert Spillane, to me, also a big pickup for this team. The season-long bet that Ben Lindsay has for the New England Patriots, Travion Henderson, speaking of new guys, their rookie running back who looked really good in the preseason, had a couple of splash plays that gets people really excited about him, and they should be. Over 700 rushing yards. Now, obviously, it's 700 and a half because it wouldn't be an even 700. So over 700 and a half rushing yards this season. That's minus 110 over at DraftKings. Ben said Henderson's ability to provide value as a receiver and a pass protector should give him a shot at a meaningful 3-down role. Even in a split backfield with Ramondre Stevenson, PFF projects Henderson over 700 rushing yards this season, and he has the breakaway ability to rip off those explosives and get to that total efficiently. Your thoughts on Travion Henderson getting over 700 rushing yards? I like the bet a lot.
Yeah, I agree with everything Ben said there that you mentioned because of the explosiveness, the speed. He has the speed and the explosive ability that nobody else in their backfield has, right? Ramondre Stevenson's a big, powerful runner. Antonio Gibson's a versatile guy, but he doesn't have the burst that Henderson does. I think you're talking about even if he doesn't get, say, 80 to 90% of carries for this team, which is the one question for me at Ohio State, is he never really got the full workload between injuries and then even last year's splitting carries with Quinshon Judkins. You're talking about a guy, though, who's always been efficient. He's always been in college 5.5, 6 yards a carry, right? And that explosive speed, he can turn a game upside down on any play. We saw it even earlier this preseason with the kick return for a touchdown to lead it off, right? I think they're going to use him in a variety of roles, but 700 yards rushing, if he plays all 17 games, I think he should easily clear that, and I think the explosive runs are going to be a big reason for it.
You guys can see all of those PFF projections as well, not just from a fantasy perspective, but also you can turn that into a betting perspective as we are doing here on the show if you have that PFF Plus subscription. So make sure you go subscribe.pff.com. Get yourself that PFF sub. You can see that on the website, but you can also see it on the app as well, where we've got a really cool new betting tool that you guys can see in the app, which shows you a lot of great player props that you can use every single week of the season. We'll be able to curate our data to show you exactly which bets we think have the biggest value and all that good stuff. So if you don't have it yet, make sure you go download the PFF app. And if you have that PFF Plus subscription, obviously you can see all of that stuff right there. Before we get to the next team, we're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins in a sec. I got to talk to all the parents out there. Parenting, it's filled with high-pressure decisions, and it can be difficult to tell if we've made the right choice for our kids' future. But here's a simple decision that you can make today that could have a meaningful impact on your kids' future. Opening a UGMA Kids Investment Account with Fabric. Start their investment journey early. Give them a financial head start. Fabric by Gerber Life, it was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids can't invest while they're minors, but this UGMA Kids Investment Account allows you to invest on their behalf. It gives their investments so much more time to grow. The funds can be used for nearly anything to benefit your child, from tuition, books, summer camp, after-school activities, things like that. And then when they're adults, you can use it for first car, first house, starting a business, things like that. All online. Setting up an account could take you as little as just 5 minutes. Get started in investing with as little as $1 a day, and then you manage your child's account, monitor those investments right from your phone. There's no contribution limits to it. It's got multiple tax advantages. It's all SIPC insured up to $500,000 plus, no commission fees, just a low flat monthly maintenance fee. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET, fabric.com/PFFNFL. The portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. You can learn more at meetfabric.com. The Miami Dolphins entering Mike McDaniel's fourth season as their head coach. Won 8 games last season. They were second in this division. And man, you know, when you say that, 8-9, It feels like a pretty good record given everything that went on with the Dolphins because it was just a terrible start for them last season. They dealt with injuries and yet still were just below that 500 mark. I think that's why we still have them right around that 8.5 win total for this upcoming season. Now, again, they're dealing with some injuries, some uncertainty, some issues along the trenches, which we'll talk about here in a second, but still right around that 8 to 9 win mark. The offensive grade last year, for a Mike McDaniel team, much lower than what was expected. Tied for 25th. Now, obviously, Tua's injury goes into that. And again, a lot of in and out in the lineup and an offensive line that just wasn't good enough. But 69.4 was the overall offensive grade for this team last year. Defensive grade, 67.8. Again, a unit that was dealing with a lot of key injuries, especially to the defensive line. 18th in the NFL was that number there. What do you think about the Dolphins? Sort of reflecting on what they were last year, the injuries that they had to overcome, and sort of the roster as it stands today going into 2025, Dalton.
I think the obvious bit about the Dolphins, if Tua is healthy, they're pretty good, and he's just not healthy very often, right? He's only played 17 games once in his career. Last year, obviously, more concussion issues. When he was on the field, they're obviously a viable offense, and they have a ton of speed, right? Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, guys like Malik Washington emerging, Devon Achane, Jalen Wright in the running game. They've got a ton of speed. They know what they want to do on offense. They just can't do it without their quarterback healthy and protected. So I think the things that the Dolphins are good at when you talk about the weapons of speed they have on offense, I think their defensive line, and especially what I've seen of Kenneth Grant this preseason, their defensive line is actually going to be really good. But the flaws that they have are so flawed that it really sinks the rest of it, right? The offensive line, the secondary, and the way they played last year. I mean, it's just been a struggle where this team, and then there's the obvious talk about when they get into these late in the season cold weather games on the road. Like I think about the Thanksgiving game last year in Green Bay, and it felt like they didn't even want to be out there. There's moments with this Dolphins team where you go, okay, they're pretty good. They're going to be a solid football team. And then there's other times where you go, they just can't overcome their flaws because they haven't found a way to fix these things. I think especially the offensive line and the secondary.
Yeah, I think that, man, you mentioned Kenneth Grant along the defensive line. It's not just him. Jordan Phillips also looks awesome. And I think that the front seven of this team, when they are fully healthy, if they can get this unit fully healthy this season, they're going to be really good. Chop Robinson, Jalen Phillips, Zach Seiler, Kenneth Grant, Jordan Phillips. I mean, this is a stout defensive line, in my opinion. You're going to be able to keep those guys behind them, Willie Gay, Jordan Brooks, those linebackers. You're going to be able to keep them pretty clean. I didn't even mention Bradley Chubb either, who's certainly been dealing with his injuries as well. They signed Matthew Judon. Like, the front of this team could be really nice. You just get into the secondary and yeah, you've got some concerns here. Now, they trade Jalen Ramsey. At least they get back Minkah Fitzpatrick. And so Fitzpatrick can play a little bit as that hybrid, free safety, box safety, nickel defender. So he can do a lot of things for you, which is good. But the team signed Rasul Douglas. They've got Storm Duck, Jack Jones, who they brought over from the Raiders, who has a lot of talent, but his play has been very up and down. They brought in Ifeatu Melifonwu as well. Ashton Davis at the safeties position, but he has been hurt. And then Jason Marshall Jr. apparently has been playing so good at the nickel position. They moved on from Mike Hilton. They let Mike Hilton go earlier this week. And so the secondary is definitely a major concern of mine. But I do think the front is going to be pretty good, especially when those guys are fully healthy.
Yeah, no, I think you could easily argue, I have their biggest strength down as their team speed, especially on offense, but you could certainly argue, especially with the depth that they have, that if they're healthy, the defensive line is actually the best part of this team. I think especially in run defense, they're going to be a real problem. I think what Kenneth Grant adds to this team is really what we were worried about them losing with Calais Campbell this offseason. He went back to Arizona now, and he's still an elite run defender at his age, but I think Kenneth Grant is a great replacement for that, and for as big as he is, he's not just a nose tackle. He can play all over the line of scrimmage. He's going to be a versatile piece for him. He's not going to rack up the most sacks in the league. He's not going to be a Chris Jones type of pass rusher, but his impact in run defense and replacing Campbell up there is going to make everybody else's life a lot easier. He's a really valuable piece, I think, already, and that's a deep defensive line you're talking about.
The key stat that you have here, the quarterback position for Tua, 79.8% adjusted completion percentage rate. That is second in the NFL. And you touched on it a little bit there when you said, hey, when this team's got Tua, obviously they can move the ball down the field. They can score a lot of points. Tua has also, over the last couple of years in Mike McDaniel's system, been a quarterback who has had one of the fastest time to throw averages in the NFL. And so it's It's a little bit of the scheme. It's certainly mastery of the offense. It's feeling good about the players that you have to throw the ball to. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Now we've got Malik Washington, who is a stud at Virginia, now sort of getting into the mix as that third receiver there. And so, I think that obviously it's a good thing when you have the ability to get the ball out of your hand quickly. I think that the Dolphins maybe overvalued that part of Tua and their offensive scheme a little too much when it came to emphasizing or just how much resources to put into the offensive line, because it felt like they went bargain bin shopping along the offensive line a little bit, or just didn't prioritize as much as they should have, because they thought, no, hey, with our offense, with our wide receivers, with our speed, we're getting the ball out pretty quickly, which, of course, if you're getting the ball out like 2.3 seconds, and you're just needing your offensive tackles, offensive guards to block for 2.3 seconds, that's not very long. You can feel pretty good about maybe making up for some pass blocking deficiencies there, but it felt like they were playing with fire a little bit, and they were towing that line a little bit too much, especially last year. But you chose that stat for a reason, that high completion percentage. I mean, I think you could have also chosen the time to throw as well, but I think that all goes into who Tua is in this offense. Just your thoughts on him overall, and picking that key stat as the one to look at for this quarterback spot.
I think that's exactly what it is, Trevor, is that heading into year 6 of Tua Tagovailoa here, we know what he is. I think a little bit different style, but I think in the similar mold of, say, a Jared Goff, right? He's decisive, he's accurate. If you give him a clean pocket, he can be really good. He runs the RPO game very well in this offense. I think Mike McDaniel's core concepts he runs very well, but at some point every week, you have to drop back and throw the football, those true dropbacks, right? And with Tua, the problem isn't so much with him as it is the protection. There's no improv ability. He's not going to get outside the pocket and make a whole lot of plays. He's going to be more comfortable with a more conservative approach, closer to the line of scrimmage in that 10 to 15-yard bubble. Not to say he can't occasionally take a deep shot, because look at the receivers he has, but he's got to have enough time in the pocket to do it, and he's not going to make a whole lot of throws off platform, right? So I think we know what he is. If he's protected and this offensive line is good, the weeks where this offensive line is good and he's back there calm in the pocket, he's really good. He's really darn accurate. His accuracy is his best trait. His decisiveness is his best trait. He just has to be able to get there more often, especially in the drop back game.
I think, I want to ask about Hill. Like, how much do you think is left in the tank with him? A little bit of a career low last year. I think in overall receiving grades, if it wasn't his career low, it was his second lowest overall season receiving grade that he had. And then when you look at the yards after catch numbers, a career low in the yards after catch numbers. So I am of the mindset that I still think that Tyreek Hill has plenty left in the tank to be an impact receiver. I still think he is explosive and fast enough to be a major difference maker that defenses have to account for at all times. Do you still think that he has that in him? Because if he's not that same guy, the offense doesn't work, in my opinion. Like, I think that Jalen Waddle could be, but I think the whole point is that you have two of these players who have almost unstoppable, unguardable speed when it comes to one-on-one. You've got to allocate multiple resources to them. You've got to get linebackers to make sure they're paying attention if they're in the slot. You got to get the safeties to pay attention, whether they're in the slot or on the outside. And it's just so hard to have multiple resources going to both of these guys and then being able to cover things the way that you need to. It only works, in my opinion, if Tyreek Hill is who Tyreek Hill has been for the greater part of, I would say, over the last 5 years. Do you think that he still has that in him?
No, I think he has plenty left in the tank. I think he's still an explosive playmaker. I think his season-long production last year was hindered severely in the games that Tua was hurt. Opposing defenses, when Tua was hurt, did not respect this offense in the least bit, right? So when you talk about a lot of Hill's production coming after the catch on screens and RPOs and short throws, these teams, even against Hill and Waddle, were getting in press man coverage and going, okay, make the throws. Go ahead, Tyler Huntley. Who else? God, I can't even think of who else was.
Damn, I don't even remember who was in the quarterback.
Was it Mike White? Did Mike White play at all for this team last year? I know for the most part it was Tyler Huntley, but it's just, you don't respect this offense when Tua's not on the field, because they just don't have enough to get it. The RPO game isn't as great. Even Tua's vertical passing ability is better than any of the backups they had last year. No, I think Hill has plenty left in the tank, and we have to remember the second half of last season, the way it went, and I know they finished 8-9, but there were games down the stretch where it felt like this team was just completely demoralized. I talk about there was an occasional lack of effort from the secondary and tackling. The Thanksgiving game sticks out to me. I think Tyreek Hill for sure, and then the comments he made at the end of the season about maybe not wanting to be there anymore, and they're trying to patch that together. Even now, Tua's even talked about that. So I think this entire team was demoralized by the end of last year. I think his production by the numbers was again severely hurt by the backup quarterback situation and just how this offense went in the tank when Tua was hurt. But I think there's plenty left in the tank for Hill. And let's be real, if the Dolphins do get off to a bad start, and if Tyreek Hill is at some point on the trade block, contenders are going to be lining up to go get him. Like, no question. That just shows you the talent that he still has. I have no question there'd be 5, 6, 7 teams calling about what it would take to get Tyreek Hill for the stretch run.
Tua played in and started 11 games last year. Tyler Huntley started 5.
Oh, who had the 1?
Skylar Thompson.
It was Skylar Thompson. Damn.
Started 1. And then we got 26 passing attempts from Tim Boyle as well.
It wasn't Mike White. I was confusing my former Jet third-string quarterbacks. Got it. Okay. Yep. I thought it was Mike White.
There's a lot of them. You got to keep tabs on them.
There's a lot to do. There's a lot of former Jet starters. Trust me.
Ben Lindsay, for his season-long bet for the Miami Dolphins, says Dolphins under 7.5 wins, minus 115 on DraftKings. He said there's a chance that the Dolphins' passing offense carries this team if Tua and the wide receivers stay healthy, but that's not an insignificant if, with real downside if Zach Wilson is forced into action. Now as the backup, speaking of Jets backups, or former starters that are now backups. And the rest of Miami's roster leaves a lot to be desired, particularly in the secondary, where they will be counting on young, unproven players at the majority of their starting spots. So kind of went over a lot of the secondary concerns that we have there, making sure that other teams' passing attacks aren't super potent against them and they're going to be able to outscore them. But yeah, I think that health is the big thing for this team. And you hate talking about that. You hate making that a reason why you don't want to believe in a team. If they're fully healthy, I think the Dolphins are going to be fun, and they're going to be in some really competitive games against some really good teams. But if they're not healthy, that's obviously where you really start to run into some issues with the depth on this roster. All right, let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. Let's bring things home with the team that won the division last year. God, how many times have the Bills won this division in a row?
I think it's 5. Is it 5 in a row now? I want to say.
I think it's more than that.
It can't go back further than 2019, and I think they were wild card in 2019. It's either
1,
it's either
2,
4 or 5.
3, 4, 5. Okay, so they are. It's 5. They're going for 6. They were second in 2019. You are correct. Yes, because they were a wild card team that year. This is Sean McDermott's 9th season as their head coach, almost a decade, which is longevity in this league that is worth giving an applause to. If you're sticking around on the same team for 9 seasons, it's pretty incredible. They finished 13-4 last season, as I mentioned, top of the division, lost in the AFC Championship game. The 2024 offensive grade with MVP Josh Allen as their quarterback, 81.0, which is tied for 7th in the NFL. Their defensive grade, 59.7. That was 28th in the league. We do still have their win total, their projected win total above that 11.5 number, just above it at 11.6. Dalton, your thoughts on the Bills? Feels like for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been talking about this team as a potential Super Bowl team. There have been a lot of people, myself included, who during that stretch have picked the Buffalo Bills to make it to the Super Bowl, and it just has not happened. Do you have more faith in them this year? What do you think about the Bills?
I think that's about an equal level of faith as I have in them any other year. Josh Allen can carry them as far as they need to go. They need to make stops in the postseason in big moments. It's their defense, to me, that has let them down for the last 4 years in the playoffs. I think that was the case again last year against a Chiefs team that really struggled a lot on offense last year. They found a way to go out there and give up 32 points. I know Allen had a shot to tie or even take the lead at the end there, but you're asking him to do so much in Kansas City if you're asking him to score 35 points against Steve Spagnuolo, maybe the best defensive coordinator ever, right? So it's like, to me, Josh Allen is the reason they are Super Bowl contenders. And there are other reasons in these postseason games, especially on defense, that they just haven't gotten there. Right now, I still have my questions about that. I like a lot of the moves they've made in the offseason. Their defensive line is loaded up with both veterans and 3 rookies that they drafted. Hopefully, Matt Milano is healthy this year and can play all 17 games and be the Matt Milano that we know he can be. But I got major questions in this secondary. Maxwell Hairston has not taken a preseason snap with a knee injury. Tre'Davious White, who they re-signed this offseason, they got him back. He just suffered a leg injury last week, and there's no timetable for his return. This secondary is going to continue to be a concern for me. And last year, they had the second lowest coverage grade in the NFL. I've got Christian Benford. I've got Taron Johnson. And at this point, I really have no idea what else they have in the secondary. Maxwell Hairston was obviously drafted in the first round to be that second outside cornerback, and he's yet to play at all. So I still have the same concerns I always have with the Bills. And I think as far as Josh Allen and the MVP debate and all that 13-4 record, if Josh Allen suffered a season-ending injury tomorrow, I think that record would flip, and they'd win about 4 games. That's how I think, yes, the numbers and Lamar, and we can debate numbers all day and which years which guys should have won the MVP. I'm actually I think between Allen and I would argue Joe Burrow as well, considering their supporting cast, and Allen's is a little better offensively than, Burrow's got the receivers, but I think Allen's the most valuable player to his team in the NFL. If that makes sense. I mean, you look at a guy, they were 17th in receiving grade last year. Their offensive line is solid. I wouldn't put it as good as Philadelphia or Detroit or teams like that in years past, but it's solid and they do have balance. But everything about them, to me, is because of number 17, right? And there's just been other reasons in these postseason games. I'm not a fan of blaming Josh Allen for their lack of being able to win the AFC, make and win the Super Bowl, all of that. He's the reason they go, and they still have to fill in the holes, and I'm worried again about this defense.
Yeah, I think the offensive line, especially the offensive tackles, I really like. I mean, Deion Dawkins is fantastic, and then Spencer Brown had a phenomenal year last season. So I love what they've got to tackle. I think the offensive line is solid overall. Again, is the best in the NFL? No, but I think that it can be top 10, certainly, as they proved at points last season. For me, the offensive weapons sort of go as Keon Coleman goes. If Keon Coleman takes that next step and becomes that wide receiver 1 for this team, I think everything looks better, right? I think you feel better about where you're positioning Khalil Shakir and how much you want to give him targets and volume and things like that. You start to feel really good about the situational football that you can play with Josh Palmer, who you brought in free agency. You've got Curtis Samuel as well. You brought in Elijah Moore. They've got a lot of depth at the running back position, headlined by James Cook. So I'm really not worried about, and of course the tight ends as well, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid. Those are guys that can certainly get in the mix and be really valuable receivers for you. And I think that it's going to be fun watching those 2 tight ends play again in this offense here in 2025. So I think the offense is going to be fantastic for this Buffalo Bills team. It just comes down to, you're right, the defense. I'm worried about the secondary. I'm worried about the safeties in particular. Are they going to get enough impact play from that safety position? The linebackers are pretty much the same. The defensive line's pretty much the same outside of the depth. You drafted guys like Deion Walker and Landon Jackson and TJ Sanders. Shout out Bull Rush McIntyre. NFL Stock Exchange podcast listeners know what I'm talking about there. You brought in Joey Bosa too. But it's a lot like the potential front 4. I mean, Joey Bosa obviously is in that lineup if he's fully healthy, but like Greg Rousseau, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, AJ Epinesa, like a lot of those guys have been around for a while. And I think I agree with you, and I hope that Buffalo Bills fans don't necessarily think that this is insulting, but I don't think the Bills' chances to win the Super Bowl are any better this year than they were the last 2 or 3 years. It's basically the same. Like, I really do think, I agree with you completely. It's basically the same. It is simply down to, can you beat Kansas City in the playoffs? You will have to play the Chiefs. It will either be in Buffalo or in Arrowhead. One of them, doesn't matter. Can you beat the Chiefs? And I think they have just as good of a chance this year as they had in previous years. Now, a better chance, a worse chance, I don't know. It's probably pretty much the same. It's just about going and getting it done. And I hope they do, because one thing that, as I don't have any ties to the Buffalo Bills. I'm just somebody who enjoys and loves the game of football and certainly appreciates when it's done at a really high level. I would hate for this elongated winning window for the Buffalo Bills to close and for them to have not even played for a Super Bowl. That would suck. That would legitimately suck, and I would not enjoy that as a lover of the game of football. So I hope that they make it to that level, because I think it would be a lot of fun, and I think that the talent ceiling of this team is worthy. I hate using the word deserve, because that sort of brings up a whole conversation of, well, if you can't get there, do you really deserve it? I will use the word worthy, and I think that's a little bit more appropriate. But I think the Bills are once again this year a team that is worthy of getting there. For a key stat here, for Josh Allen, first quarterback in PFF history with 90 plus PFF grade in 5 straight seasons. Dalton, it really was kind of those first 2 years where Josh Allen was grading in the 60s in his NFL career. And then week 3 to this point, he has just been MVP caliber almost every single season. And this year doesn't look any different, in my opinion.
No, I mean, again, he's the engine. He's the heartbeat of this team. He's the reason they win football games. And you mentioned going from that second year into that third year. A, the Bills traded for Stephon Diggs. And B, Allen went off to the side and worked. He redid his mechanics, and he got more accurate. Is he ever going to be the most accurate passer in football with as much as he attacks downfield? No. But, I mean, you look at even last year, 7% big-time throw rate is ridiculous. 93.6 rushing grade is ridiculous. In big moments, if it's me, short yardage, red zone, anytime inside the 5-yard line, whatever, I'm not even handing the ball off. And I know they just paid James Cook a lot of money. They have Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, whatever. I'm letting Josh Allen keep it because, I mean, that's essentially he's an even better version of what Cam Newton was back in the day for Carolina. I really mean that. Plus, he turned in the lowest turnover-worthy play rate of his career last year. So anybody thinks, the interceptions or this or that are the problem, it's not. Josh Allen's just one of the elite playmakers in the NFL. He's unquestionably top 4, whatever order you want to put the top 4 quarterbacks in, whatever. We've had enough arguing about that. But Josh Allen as a dual threat, and again, it's just the engine of this entire football team, it shows in the grading. I mean, the first ever, Tom Brady had 4 straight, I want to say it was from 2015 to 2018. That sounds right to me. And Allen being the first one with 5 straight 90s. It's just ridiculous what he can do both as a passer and a runner.
How do you feel about this defensive line before we get to the season-long predictions? Because I mentioned some of the names there, some of the young guys. Greg Rousseau, in my opinion, is sort of the star here, right? Everything kind of goes around, him having that inside-out versatility. Is he worthy of being that star that the defensive line is built around? And then how do you feel about the supporting cast, the veterans of Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver and Joey Bosa, and then those younger guys, Deion Walker, Landon Jackson, TJ Sanders? Like, how do you feel? And then some young guys that they had the year before as well. You have Dwayne Carter's on this team. Javon Solomon's on this team. Like, I'm curious what you think about this Bills defensive line. Does it have the depth that you want it to have? Does it have the star power that you want it to have? And I think the conversation kind of starts with Rousseau there.
I think maybe they could use one more big-time pass rusher, although I would love to see Joey Bosa in a more situational role where he's not playing every snap and he can avoid the injuries and not play quite as much in run defense. I want to see a bounce back from Bosa, but I like that they've brought in different types of players, right? You've got, obviously, Ed Oliver, who's a good pass rusher. You've got, guys like Michael Hoyt, who's a good run defender. Landon Jackson in college was a good run defender. But then you've got pass rushers like Joey Bosa, TJ Sanders, even Deion Walker. You're right. These young guys, I think they even got different types of players in there who can play different roles. And their run defense especially is a lot better with Rousseau on the field. I think there's definitely enough depth. Rousseau is the star of the show. I think the X factor is Bosa stepping up and being the Joey Bosa that he was for so many years out in San Diego, in LA. I think he played in San Diego. But, I just think this is the best unit by far on their defense. It's the back 7 I worry about more. I think especially as long as Rousseau is healthy and on the field, he's one of the best edge defenders in football, and I think they've got a deep enough defensive line where they can compete with just about anybody. You mentioned Epinesa as well. They can kind of get these big rotations going. They can have an early down unit. They can have a pass rush unit. They've got a lot of different types of players, and I really like that a lot. I think Rousseau and Oliver are going to be the 2 guys that play more than anybody else, but they've got a lot of weapons to work with up there.
For the Buffalo Bills, Ben Lindsay's season-long bet that he likes the most for them, Josh Palmer, over 1,000 yards receiving. Woo! Plus 1,200. Obviously, you're getting some cash there for that bet. That's over at DraftKings. He said there's a reason why this bet is 12-1. Palmer hasn't put up over 600 yards receiving in a single season. But I think that there's reason to bet on a breakout year in a more stable offensive environment in Buffalo. Palmer earned a higher average separation grade in 2024 than Buffalo's 2 other starters at wide receiver in Coleman and Shakir, and was a vertical option at 15.0 yards per reception that could quickly become one of Josh Allen's favorite targets. I agree with the reasoning. I agree with the reasoning. I don't know if I agree with Ben that we're getting over 1,000, but it is one of those bets that's kind of fun. We heard throughout the show, you've got bets that are, minus 115, minus 110, plus 115. So right around even money that you're getting back whatever you bet. This one's obviously a 12-1 long shot type of a bet, but if you have reason to believe that there is a path to where if he catches fire, maybe he does get over that 1,000-yard mark, and in a very potent vertical offense in which Coleman could be a vertical wide receiver for them, but maybe he's just more of the sort of do-it-all wide receiver one type of a player. Shakir, we know, is going to be a little bit more of an underneath player in his skill set there. Depending on how they utilize their tight ends, it really could be when they want to attack deep, Palmer is the guy that they're going to constantly look toward because he has been that throughout his career, including last year. So a long shot bet here, but one that you can at least paint the picture and create that reality and say, yeah, I can see that happening.
I think he's taken your Keon Coleman theory and just applied it to Josh Palmer, right? And he's been a solid player out with the Chargers, right? 3 years ago, he had 769 receiving yards in the regular season. I'm even looking at this last year. 15 yards per catch was a top 20 mark in football. It was actually tied with DK with DK Metcalf and Brandon Ayuk for 16. So you talk about if he got the volume, it is possible, right? And if he's the guy that steps up, especially on the vertical targets, because the hard part about, say, a guy like Khalil Shakir getting those targets, he has one of the lowest average depth of targets in football, right? Keon Coleman, a bit inconsistent last year, a couple of big games, but couldn't bring it week to week. I think when you look at Palmer being maybe the main vertical threat in the Bills' offense, then it starts to make sense. But he's got to play all 17 games. We need the consistency out of him. And then, obviously, Joe Brady's just got to scheme some things up for him. But, looking at this now, I didn't even realize Josh Palmer's not even 26 years old yet. He'll be 26 next month. Feels like he's been around forever.
I would have guessed 28. If you put me on the spot, I would have said 28. So it would have been over 26, to your point, while you're bringing it up. There we go. All 4 teams in the AFC East talked about, discussed, previewed. We only have 4 more teams left. It's the NFC East teams. We're going to be coming to you on Thursday for that same time at 10 a.m. right here on the YouTube channel. Shout out to everybody in the chat, getting in on the chat, giving our thoughts on the show for these 4 teams. And if you would like to get in on the chat yourself, obviously tune in live when we are live at 10 a.m. Eastern on Thursday. Shout out to our sponsors as well. If you guys are interested, if anybody out there is interested in partnering with PFF, potentially sponsoring this show or any other great content that we have over at PFF, you can reach out at sales@pff.com. Dalton, 4 more. That's all we got. 4 more teams. 4 more teams stand in the way between us and regular season football.
4 more fun
up
ones
next week.
Absolutely.
Very, 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 very excited about it. Go get your pumpkin spice latte, my friend. I won't keep you from that any further. Appreciate everybody watching and listening to the show. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Dalton Wasserman saying thank you for watching the PFF NFL show. See you guys on Thursday.